Welcome back to the PharmaVerse podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pietrack. And if you're a leader or an aspiring leader in the pharmaceutical industry, well, then you are in the right place because we interview the brightest stars from all the corners of the pharma universe. And the PharmaVerse podcast is sponsored by K. Bassman International, your complete recruiting resource in the biopharma industry, and by Executive Biotech Advisors, a premier biopharma consulting firm. Today, we're joined by John Harlow, a senior commercial leader in the pharmaceutical industry, and we're going to be discussing how to create a people-first culture. He shares timeless leadership insights, including a leadership nugget that he found in a place that he least suspected it. So, John Harlow, welcome to the PharmaVerse.
Thanks, Michael. I'm excited to be here.
I want to get to a story that you told me that I love. You know, you're stuck in an airport in Orlando, you're missing your family. And didn't you have some sort of interaction with like a waitress or a flight attendant or something? And she was just, she had some quality that it's really helped you as a leader?
Yeah. So it was very much just, people were very frustrated. And she, I remember if we reflect back on it, because, the number of flights we fly on, it's hard to keep track of them all. She was just very upbeat, very helpful. Is there anything else I can get for you? But, we were all in it together. And I think it was someone who appreciated the situation and also didn't take it too seriously has really helped me be a leader. Right? To really understand the gravity of a lot of the decisions we make and what have you, but you can't take yourself too seriously at the end of the day. So yeah, that flight attendant, no one was happy, obviously. We were probably delayed, I think it was 5-6 hours, but she handled it with class and she understood, well, these are the people that are my customers right now. I have to make the best of this.
So how can we apply that, when we're leading a team? Maybe something's going bad. How can a leader take that story and apply it to their practice?
Yeah. So from that perspective, it's a couple things, Michael. It's control what you can control, right? It's understanding there's always more behind the person, right? Whether it's a family, right? Whether there's other decisions, there's other life events. So as we sit here today, there's a lot more that's going behind your background and my background. And so I think to be a better leader that I've learned over the years is understand that everyone shows up at work with something else. And it could be good. It may not be good. And so to have appreciation to treat the person as a whole versus just as an employee really goes a long way. And look, I've learned that the hard way over the years, probably being too tough at times, and being too business focused. And now it's very much it's about the people and then performance, and having that right balance is what I strive to do every day.
In hiring, how do you, as the hiring manager or part of a hiring team, ensure that you're hiring the right people that are going to take you and your team and your company to that next level? Any John Harlow tricks?
If I had one trick, I would probably be able to market that and sell that.
Yeah, that's true. Me
well,
too.
Right?
Me too.
But to be honest, for me, most of the time, by the time a candidate gets to me, they've been well vetted, and unless it's a direct report that I'm, hiring for. And so I'm looking for the values and behaviors beyond the technical skills. My team and teams in the past have done an excellent job, weeding out candidates that maybe just weren't ready for the role or maybe not the right fit. And so I'm really looking at fit. Do they fit within the culture? Do they fit within the team? And how do they make the team better? That's what I'm always focused on. You don't want everyone to look the same, dress the same, think the same. So how do they complement the team? And that's what I look for. And one of my favorite questions that I ask is, if I gave you a do-over, what would it be and why? And it's amazing that some people say, I don't have any do-overs. I go, really? Because I think I have one every day.
Yeah. I mean,
and so,
who doesn't need a mulligan?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The second person's always better than the first person, right? Certainly from a mulligan perspective. And so that's a question that I've used time in and time again just to really understand how a person thinks. Do they reflect on the past to learn? I don't want someone to over-index on the past, but I want
Right.
someone to always be learning.
I've been thinking more about this stewardess, and I got to think you're thinking you could put this individual really in almost any function, and she'll probably do pretty well. And you had the luxury of seeing her in a real life situation. But when you're in an interview, you have to tell little short stories that get the person to be like, oh, I see what this person is. And a lot of times industry uses these situational questions. Tell me about a time when. Do you subscribe to that way of interviewing too?
I do to some extent, but I've evolved. I have a set of questions that I typically answer, but it depends on the candidate. It depends on the role. But as it relates to the mulligan question, I just say, give me an example of knowing now what you know. What would you have done differently? What did you learn from it?
Yeah.
Right. And so people can get into the star, the situation, the
Yeah.
task, the action, the results, and I get all that. I'm fortunate in my previous roles, current roles, of surrounded by great people, and so a lot of the times, by the time the candidate gets to me, it is very much around values and behaviors, and is there a cultural fit? The technical
Yeah.
expertise, my team has already grilled them on that.
Yeah. It's already
So I want to
vetted.
see is this person going to fit, with the team, and at the end of the day, make the team better.
How much of that is gut?
I think what is it? Colin Powell uses the 40-70 rule. I don't know if you've heard that
No,
before,
tell us about it.
where you need somewhere between 40% of the information and 70% of the information to make the best decision. If you don't have up to 40%, then you're going completely with gut. If you have over 70% of the information to make a decision, you're spending a lot of time and resources to collect more information that may not have an impact.
Mm-hmm.
So, the reason why I respond that way, Michael, to the gut is there's certainly gut instinct, but it needs to be data driven to
Yeah.
some degree. And that's why in any role that I'm part of the hiring process for, it's a team discussion. Right?
That's
People
good.
show up differently to different people. Even if you ask the same question to the same candidate, 5 different people, and might get 5 different answers. So I do subscribe to a team approach on interviewing. But there is a gut feel to it. It's not agnostic to gut. I've hired purely on gut before, and that hasn't worked out well.
So I've been talking a lot about interviewing. Let's just go right into like more leadership philosophy. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on this podcast is because I know you're such a student of leadership. And I am as well. And so are our listeners. That's why they listen to this podcast. Give a leadership nugget, a skill or something that has really worked for you.
Oof. That's a tough one, Michael. Even though I knew you were going to ask the question, it's still it still is a tough one. I think for me, it's very much around listening and curiosity. And the reason why I say that is, for me and in my roles, I'm only as good as the people around me. I acknowledge that, I recognize that, and I take a fair amount of accountability on that. And so for me, it is being a good listener, being curious, and surround yourself at the end of the day with people who are a whole lot smarter than you are. If you asked me 10 years ago, it would be all about results, driving for results. If you listen and then performing happens at that point.
So put that into practice. When you say be curious, is it about them as individuals? Is it about the challenges that they're faced with? What do you mean by curious?
It's really all of the above. It's asking why. It's asking why more than once. You
Oh.
may there. I think there's books who've been published. Ask why 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And I'm sure my team, feels aggravated at times with why I've asked why, because I'm really trying to understand how they're thinking, why they're recommending whatever it is that they're recommending. And so having that, being a good listener and being curious, asking why, is important. And the other thing to pick up on, which you just said, is it's also understanding the person on the other side of the screen, on the other side of the table, that they are a person, a whole person. So it's not just the work person, right? They bring more than that. And that's why I've subscribed to the saying people first, performance always over the last decade, because when I put both of those sides together, I have found that that's where the magic really happens.
Well, that's really where I wanted to take the question next, because I'm a leader of a sales organization where performance is like the key metric, versus effort and those sorts of things. And how do you manage performance, like making a performance culture without losing that people element?
That's a tough one. It's certainly from a sales perspective, right? Yeah, obviously you have to hire great people and continue to develop them, right? Whether you inherited the team or you're hiring new people, as long as you continue to develop and challenge, and motivate, that is critical. But from a leadership perspective and balancing the people element and the performance, you have to model the behavior. You have to understand that there's always a story behind a number. And when I talk to, my sales leadership teams and the salespeople know where they're ranked. You don't need to remind someone, where they're ranked.
Yeah.
It's understanding the why behind the number. Okay, so if it's 100, tell me why that's good, or tell me why that's not good. And a phrase that I learned from a mentor of mine over the years is, if you're not winning, you're asking for help. And that's the culture that we try to subscribe to, that I try to emulate around. It's not okay if you're not winning and you're not doing anything about it. That's a non-negotiable. But if you're not winning, but you're trying, you're asking for help, you're soliciting feedback, I'm going to do whatever I can, and the teams around do whatever we can to make that person, be successful. Sometimes it's additional training, sometimes it's guidance, sometimes it's coaching. Sometimes there's things happening behind the screen that's just getting in the way, and sometimes they just need a hug.
Yeah.
Right? They need to understand that there's more to life than just hitting a quarterly number. But you still need to perform. So that's why I have the people first, performance always. It really helps me, balance my approach.
I like that. I'm going to use that. And this is, for my own knowledge. So I'm really dying to know this. So let's say you take someone who's underperforming. They know it. Maybe there is a why. And maybe, what are some of the support things that you do for that person to get them from underperforming, to get them back flying with the rest of the flock?
Certainly it takes the critical thinking and analysis, right? What's the driver of the underperformance? Right? Is it product knowledge? Is it how they're showing up in front of a customer? Is it how they're communicating the message? Is it their routing, their business analytics, right? So you have to spend time diagnosing the problem. And that's not typically my role. That's the sales leader, role in that. And that's helping the sales leader and then helping the salesperson, ultimately, find ways to be successful, and then putting a plan in place and creating an environment where you're encouraging performance and results, which are also, verifying. I love the expression trust but verify. I think that's important. But I have learned over the years, it's not a one size fits all approach. You can't put the same plan and approach and even analytical rigor to one part of the country versus another part of the country, right? They're very different. And so you have to seek to understand, I think is the driving force there.
In our situation in the recruiting world, our numbers are up for everyone to see. And sometimes you're at the top, sometimes you're in the middle, sometimes you're at the bottom, just as you said. Sometimes the slide is a gradual one. Sometimes it's like, what happened? But ultimately, in a sales organization which you run, tend to be competitive. And I remember when we were talking last time, we started competing on who's more competitive. So, but you said something really profound about competitiveness. You said that some people are driven by the love of winning. Others are driven by the hatred of losing. Explain the difference.
Yeah. It's been an evolution for me, right? Someone had asked me a question years ago, do you love to win or do you hate to lose? Right? And if you asked me 10 years ago, I would say I hate to lose, right? Why? Because I expect to win, right? That's really what it comes down to. And whether that was probably years of playing sports growing up and being very competitive, I've pivoted over the years, probably as I've matured to you're either winning or you're learning. You're not so much losing, right? This is not, a football game on the weekend, or pick whatever sport
Yeah.
you want to pick, right? Where you're keeping score. Although you do keep score, in sales, this is business. This is not, sports. And so I've evolved my thinking personally to hate to lose, to more love to win, because at the end of the day, in the leadership role, I don't win individually. It's winning as a team sport. Everyone else on the team needs to be rowing in the right direction. They need to be on the right seat of the boat or bus, or whatever analogy you want to use. And in business, there are very few times where you really lose. There are, right? And we could probably spend another podcast talking about when you lose in business. But when it comes down to quarterly performance of sales results and you're ranked in the bottom, that's, you're not losing per se, right? Maybe you're doing not as well as others, but that's where I really have changed my mantra to I love to win, because I love to help people win. And I don't win if everyone, right, isn't winning. Versus losing. And when we lose, it's not really a loss. It's a learning opportunity. How do I get better? How do I apply X, Y, and Z? So that's how I changed my tune. But having said that, Michael, I'm still a very competitive person.
I still hate to lose. Well, I hear you. And when it comes to competitiveness, I feel like I've changed over the years too. So it started off with like me versus you, and I want to win. More to like now I'm just competing with myself. I'm trying to outdo myself. I'm competing with me. I'm competing with yesterday versus competing with my competitors. Have you noticed that in yourself too, as you've matured?
I have. I really have. It's very much of, am I the better version of myself today than I was yesterday or the day before? And some days I'm not, I'll be honest, right?
Yeah.
You've got ups and downs. But it's very much a internal drive and a competitive situation to be the best version of yourself versus to beat down somebody else, right? There's in this industry, as you know, there's enough for everyone to win and be successful.
Right.
Right. It's just where and what, and everything in between there. So the drive is still there, but the drive is more a personal, drive versus pushing that internal drive onto people.
I ask a lot of our guests this question. I love this question. What leadership advice would you tell the younger John Harlow that's maybe moving into his first leadership role? Like, what would you want to tell that guy?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Right. That's a good question. I would tell him it's not all about the numbers. Right? I would tell him it's about the people, and it's understanding there's a story behind the number. Spend time understanding and listening, and then make good decisions, business and people, based upon that. As the younger John moved too fast, was too competitive. I'm still very competitive, but was too competitive without having a purpose.
Yeah.
And it comes with losing, quite frankly, right? You either win or learn, as I said, before. And so I'd like to say I'm the kinder, gentler version, but still have a high bar. And it comes with life lessons, right? When when you come across a decision on people or business, you may not be able to make the same decision that you made the last time you came across a similar type of situation, because it's never the same situation. There's always, people are complicated.
Well, I know that these pearls of wisdom are things you're sharing with your team and even with your kids. They're now young adults. Hit us with a bit of advice that you've taught your kids that you hope you take into their lives and into their careers.
Yeah. Grind, right? Very much grind. Look, life is hard. You know it. You have to celebrate success. But I have my daughter, who's my oldest, is now entering into the work world. Right? Thinks like all college graduates, knows everything. Dad's wrong, mom's wrong. And even for my boy, it's you just have to continue to grind, work hard, and good things happen. Now you have to be a good person, right? There's a whole lot of other things that come along with it. But if all else being equal, what's the expression? Hard work, beats talent when talent doesn't show up. So that's why I go right back to, you got to grind.
I love it. John, well, that's all the time we have for the episode. But for all of our listeners out there in the Pharmaverse, I want to thank you for sharing these really powerful perspectives with us. And we've all benefited from them.
Oh, it's been fun. I appreciate it, Michael.
Well, that concludes another episode of the PharmaVerse podcast. Please subscribe to the channel because we have many more great leaders lined up for you with insights that will take your career to the next level. But for now, that's a wrap. See you next time on the PharmaVerse.